Welcome back to the Community Action Partnership podcast. My name is Jamie, and with me today is Gail and Jesse. In a previous podcast, we talked about language registers and voices when we communicate. Today, we'll be discussing the importance of story structure and time management when we communicate. If you missed the podcast on language and voices, go back and check it out now. When I'm saying story structure, what does that mean?
So I think it's the way we tell the story, and we're going to pick out what the most important part is and what the character of the plot is and some others. And so what structure, and that will probably dictate how the story, how we tell it.
So kind of how it's delivered.
Yeah, there's the formal and the casual. And so again, we go back to that relationship. So if we're talking about characters, it's probably going to be that casual, because we're going to emphasize and build the characters. And if it's formal, it's going to be direct. This is what the point I want to make, and go for that. Jesse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with formal, there's going to be, obviously, you're going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right,
and it's kind of like direct.
Yeah, you're getting to the point of what you want to say. Not so much trying to make it exciting.
Exciting.
Right.
You just want to
descriptive.
We want to get to the point, and we want to make it clear what the point is, right?
Exactly.
So that's more of like the formal story structure.
Well, and that goes along, and it's usually with the formal register that we've spoken to about in the
Sure. Yeah.
prior.
I mean, they go hand in hand. Yeah.
There you go. Full sentences, direct, casual. You're going to have the shorter words, more hand movements, and build up the characters, build up the excitement. So,
And it might not necessarily be in order, right?
right.
It might take a little bit longer, kind of circling around or, changing different directions. But it's more entertaining that way.
Right.
When would be the appropriate time to use which one? Like, is there the right time or a more important time?
I would say if you're at an employment, if you're working and something happens, maybe there's an accident, a machine breaks, or something happens at work and you need to relay that information to your supervisor or your manager or your boss or your coworkers, they're going to want the more direct route. They're going to want to know how it started, what happened, and what can we do about this, right? So they're going to want that formal story structure when you're telling them what is going on. They're not going to want a story
About where it was and who was there, and
Yeah, they don't need all the entertaining factors that go along with it,
right.
You don't need to tell them what you had for lunch and,
I was out to lunch and I hit the car. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and obviously in work, you're trying to get things done quicker, you know what I mean? So a formal story structure in work would probably be more
Appropriate.
And also in maybe like, say, if you're going to the doctors or something and you have an illness or you got hurt, you need to tell them how it started, what were the symptoms of it, you know what I mean? And you're going to want to give them it in a formal story structure.
And I think a point that you're bringing out is that story structure is time management also. You're saving, if you're speaking to somebody, whether it's a doctor or your CEO or whatever, their time's important. And so they're going to want just facts, ma'am, and so that's really important to recognize when you use your formal and which structure you're going to use, because that's important for it to be received well.
Yeah, there's that saying, time is money, right?
Right. Time is money. So
Yeah. I think the first time I kind of remember having to use a formal story structure was exactly what you were explaining, Jesse. I was at a job and I was working and a piece of equipment had broke. And I wasn't there to see it, but I was trying to get the story from, the crew that was there witnessing it. And I think they were telling me in that, a more casual. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, it wasn't as clear and direct, like you were saying, like, beginning, middle, end, direct to the point.
Right.
And it took a little bit longer. And then I had to take that and relay it back to my bosses. And so I think that was the first time I was like, the bosses are never around. There's not a lot of time that they have. And so that, formal time is money. I think that's the first time I can think of it really playing a part in my delivering a story.
And because you wanted formal information, they were giving you casual. Didn't you feel like you were getting a little frustrated, or just somebody just tell me what happened?
Well, yeah, I was kind of like what you said, get to the point. Like,
Get to the point.
I want the information. So, yeah, I guess it could be frustrating or annoying, something along
Right,
that, because I was looking for it quickly.
There's also, like when you were talking about, so in this instance, something happened, you were the supervisor, somebody had to tell you what happened, and then they tell you it in a casual story structure with a lot of extra stuff, and then you have to go and relay that information to somebody else. Since it's not like a clear cut, like this is what happened and it's easy information, then you always have the chance of a lot of information being lost when it's passed between person and person, because a person's trying to remember everything you just told them and you're losing
Right.
the important stuff in there, So that's one factor to think about when you're telling a story,
So we talked about formal. Like when would it be more appropriate or a better place for casual?
Casual could be any time that you're wanting to tell a story and you're wanting it to make it more enjoyable for somebody, or you're just having a casual conversation with somebody, your friend, your family member, and you're telling them a story.
That goes into that relational. So it's a more friendly, it's more received, and you can go in a circle and you can explain this part. I'm good at that. Jamie's always telling me that I saw my squirrel come back, but it's relational. You're among friends, you're relaxed. Even if it's something that broken equipment, after the fact, you can say, yeah, and this person did this. So it's relational, and that's where the casual comes in.
So
I think one thing I think about, and you said relational and telling a story, like casual people can, interject or like bump into
Interrupt each other, yeah.
And formal, that's not really, necessary or what you're looking for. So I think that
Yeah,
Right.
that's one place.
right.
Yeah, I think if you're in like a formal story structure, it would be, if somebody was cutting you off and stuff, it would be
Frustrating,
probably
maybe?
considered rude almost.
Very rude.
Yeah.
Yeah, not acceptable.
And in casual, you may cut each other off, and because it's something that's adding to the story.
It's
right?
more entertaining if
Yeah.
you add your part to it.
Because
Yeah.
if like you're talking about a story, whatever it is, and you're bringing up, oh well, I remember this time it was kind of like this, and you start talking about something else. Somebody might jump in there and go, oh, I remember like this, and they might say something that goes along with what
Right.
you're telling.
Right.
You will eventually get to the point of the story, but you might have to go through some hoops to get there.
But you've had a good relationship
Right.
and a good
right.
conversation along
But you're
the
having
way.
good conversation, right?
Right. You're having a
Maybe
good
some
conversation.
humor,
Yep. Yeah.
Now I heard you guys, we talked about time is money. Let's talk a little bit, like shift gears from story structure to time management. Where does time management fit into communication?
Well, I think if you're talking about story structure, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're talking about the way you're telling the story, obviously, if it's in, like we were talking about in work and stuff like that, it definitely plays a factor in your time. You know what I mean?
Well, it can also, if you're time management and you have a 10-minute speech that like we're doing a speech for a grant, we better be not telling stories, but be more direct. This is our needs. This is where we go, because we only have X amount of time and do it well in a communicative well, so that it's received. And so that's where your time management. If you have
So where the focus is at,
The
what you're
focus-
focusing on while
focus
you're
on
telling
what
that
the
story.
object is, where this is going to go, and so it's more direct, formal conversation for time management.
The thing about time management is, especially if you have your day planned out, if you start getting into these things where you're losing focus on other things, then the rest of your day is shot, and like you just become I just become like stressed from it. You know what I mean? Because you know you got a certain amount of time in the day to get your stuff done. And then it's just a snowball effect when something happens, you know. And it's really important, I think, when we're talking about time management, really is, it's not just like how we're managing our time as far as like, okay, I'm doing this at this time, I'm doing this at this time, I'm doing this at this time, but also like that focus that you're talking about. Like, are you focusing on what is at hand now, or are you stuck focusing on what happened an hour ago, or what's going to happen 3 hours from now?
Can you give us an example?
I would say like, so I know that we talked about, in one of our other podcasts, we talked about emotional intelligence. I like the subject of emotional intelligence because it plays in a lot of other areas in life, right?
Right.
And so time management, especially when we get hijacked, when we get into these emotional states by something that's happened during the day, a lot of times our time management for the day goes out the window, right? I have a story that happened. One day I was driving back to work from lunch, and I was in my car. And as I was driving, the brake line burst. And so I lost my brakes, right? And of course, I'm like, I can still make it to work.
Living
I can
dangerously?
still make it to work. You know what I mean? So I was using my e-brake to slow myself down in between stops. But anyways, it was a
Don't
very...
do this at home, folks.
Yeah, don't do this at home. I'm a professional, people. But so it was a highly stressful thing, right? Because like I was bad enough because at this time I wasn't, my budget was not very good. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I had an older car. Anytime anything happens with like a car or something like that, it equals money, right? Now what's leaking out of my car is money, right? So that's the way I'm seeing it. I'm watching the money leak behind my car. And so by the time I get to work, I'm like highly stressed, right? I'm already emotionally hijacked at this point because of, the fear of the driving, the knowing that I don't have to pay for it. Then like I had my day planned out. I had I had to take my kids to an appointment right after I got out of work. So it was like I had to do my job and then I had to go pick them up, take them. My day was lined out. But I was so hijacked that I couldn't focus on anything else that day. Like I couldn't focus on my work. I couldn't focus on anything. And then it just kind of snowballed my time from there because I had to try to fix the car before I got off of work so I could pick the kids up and stuff. And it was just one thing after another. It was a nightmare. And I was like, we were like an hour and a half late to our doctor's. It was just everything snowballed
Just
from
added
there.
up.
So, and it's just because all of it was, even though I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, my focus was stuck on what happened with my car and the brake line for the rest of the day. And I wasn't able to manage my time the rest of the day because I was emotionally hijacked.
Okay, so I have a question. So knowing what you do now, how could you have changed once you got to work? I mean, it happened, it's over, you got all this mess. What
I should have, when I got back to work, I should have took a pause moment. I should have did my breathing. I should have taken a step back, maybe told my boss, hey, this just happened. I need a break from work for a little while just to get myself, back settled down and stuff, and let myself get out of that hijack state so then I could think clearly again and say, okay, this is what happened. It's life. Things happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
But instead, I just allowed myself to get hijacked. And then, it's like we talked about before in other podcasts, once you get to that point and you let all those chemicals flood in your body, your thinking brain is gone. You know what I mean? And now I'm just focused on the hijacking.
Mm-hmm. And probably your work would have been more efficient. The environment.
Everything would have been.
Everybody working around you would have been a little more efficient. And so, yeah, it would have been.
And so it's very important to understand, like, okay, when I have emotional things happen, there's going to be situations that arise during the day that are going to challenge your ability to stay on track.
Mm-hmm. And that's time management.
And that's part of your time management, right? because we can plan out our day the best way we know how to do. We can have it lined out completely, but sometimes things happen. And so you need to be understanding and prepared that, okay, I need to have good emotional intelligence. So when these things happen, I can stay on time.
So along that line, using some of the other podcasts we talked about, emotional intelligence is important. Taking the time to step back, take a breath, rethink. Yeah, it's accepted. So what are my solutions? Get the brain thinking again, and then the self-talk and the communication. What's going on? Or communicating with your employee. Hey, I need to step back for a minute. My work's going to be more efficient if you just give me 5. There's a lot. Time management consists of a lot of important skills.
Yeah, and it's also quality of life.
Yes.
Because if you have poor time management, everything else suffers, you know what I mean? And then you're just stressed all the time because you're trying to, we all know somebody that says, I don't have enough time. And it's like, typically like something like it takes like 2 minutes to do. And they're like, I don't have enough time in the day. It's like, yes, you do. You don't have good time management and it's affecting everything else in your life. You know what I mean?
So I hear you guys talking about like consequences. There's consequences to, poor time management or not delivering a story, in a formal, short, direct way versus a casual way. Is there any other things that play a role or the consequences there, that we could share?
In Jesse's point, I think we work in the same building, but not in the same office. But consequences could be the relationships you have with your fellow coworkers. He came in and he's upset and he's stressed, and I said good morning, and he just kind of blew me off because he's thinking about his car. I'm going to think, oh, have I offended him? Oh, well, maybe fine. It can snowball that way if you don't have a good relationship with your other coworkers. Now, I would with Jesse, I'd have went in and said, hey, but that can affect your working
it could
environment,
definitely affect others,
which
Right.
again
your choices and
decreases the time management and the efficiency of how the office is being run. It's very important.
I'd also like to add to that because not only just talking on coworkers, but personal relationships as well,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely,
We talk
yeah.
about relationships a lot. Relationships with your family members and friends and things like that. I could say for myself, when I say something to somebody like, hey, how come I didn't hear from you? And they say, oh, I just didn't have time. I've been so busy. What that says is you're not important to me.
Yep, that's what you hear.
That's
yeah.
basically what I hear when I hear that, right? If it's something that takes it's like, you didn't have a minute, or like something like that, right? And it really comes down to somebody not managing their time, which ultimately affects their relationship with other people because those people feel less important because they don't have the time for them,
Absolutely.
And like your relationship with your children, if you're not managing your time well, then you don't have the time to spend good quality time with them.
And they hear that too. Oh, Dad's busy. They hear,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not. They didn't hear Dad was busy and it's important. I support you. They hear, oh, I'm not important. It's very important for time management.
Yeah.
And I know that your thing for you is quality time, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you can speak on to, how time management plays a vital role in getting quality time when you need it.
Yep. I know instances where I thought we had planned to do things as a family or had ideas in my head, and if somebody in the group or the family is focusing on something else and that just overrides the time, then, my plans have been shot or I don't get the amount of time that I thought I was going to or needed. And yeah, I think that could definitely put a strain on relationships that, absolutely.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that time management, affects. It's like you hear a lot of the times, we'll take, for instance, people who will talk about their health and say that I'm not healthy. I need to go to the gym or, I need to do this. I need to do this. And you're like, well, why don't you go? And then almost 90% of the time it's, I don't have enough time.
Yep.
And it's like, what? Yes, you do have enough time. You're just not managing your time properly.
Thank you very much.
You can make the time.
So
You're right.
if you think you don't have enough time, what do you do? How do you find that time? Like, what do you have any recommendations? Like, what would you suggest to somebody?
Reevaluate what you
Planning
do.
out your day, planning out your week, writing it down. It just depends. Everybody's different. But like, do you have important things that you want to do, let's say, throughout this week?
Make
Right.
it priority.
Okay, what's the priority to them? And then how do we make the time to make that happen? And by planning that out, knowing when you're doing it, then you're actually telling yourself, I'm going to do this.
If I write
know?
it down, Jesse, if I write it down that I'm going to do that, 90% of the time I'll do it. If I want to do it, like I don't have enough time because this and this and this, that planning and writing it down and making it a priority, it always works. And
Yeah, if you just say,
nothing's changed.
yeah, I'll probably get to that this week, or I'll get to it sometime this week, you might not get to it. But if you make a commitment to yourself, or write it down, or even to another person, like, yeah, I'm going to do this on this day, then chances are you're probably going to do it. And you'll be surprised at how well you can manage your time to make it happen.
Nothing's changed. Works the same. Yep.
Kind of
But you've
the motivating factor there.
Yeah, for sure.
Gail, I think you told me about a time that you had a story about time management and the workplace. You want to share that?
Well, yes. And it's been, I've been a CAP for 11 years. And my personality, in case you haven't picked up on all these podcasts, is I really like to visit and relationship, and I like people. And so I talk a lot. Okay. Might have not have picked that up, but it's there. But after taking the classes, after I took the class, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Didn't write it down, didn't do it. Then I started giving the classes and I went, oh my gosh. So here's the deal. I'm casual and I would go in to my supervisor and or the CEO or whoever's I'm speaking with, my doctor, whatever needs to have just that time management thing, tell the whole stinking story about maybe what's happened, how I got here, and how I had this wonderful idea. And all they want to know about is the idea. Gail, you and Natasha have helped me with Gail, squirrel, bring it back. And so, I'm doing the casual and not the formal. It's really important, and it's really helped me feel more comfortable. I have great bosses and supervisors and coworkers, and they all understand. Oh, this is Gail. But it has been important for me for my self-worth. Like, I'm not coming across as a twit. I went in there, I did say this. If I go in there, line it out on paper, I'd write it down on paper and say, okay, this is whatever, I like this idea. I think whatever proposal, if we do it this and this and this is why. Don't leave out the entire story of how I got here and what I was doing. And I walk away and I think, I'm a little smarter today. Or they've never said that, but I have more self-confidence now that I practice the difference between where am I at, what's the environment, what do I propose, either formal or casual.
And then I think it kind of goes back to that whole planning. You've identified that this is how you speak, and you wanted to change it, and so then you put together a plan.
And it had nothing to do with, because it might have affected my jobs in the past or whatever, but it has affected my self-worth. I feel, have you ever went home and went, why did I say that? Or, I should have said this. Now, if identifying it, writing down the PowerPoints, I don't even take the notes in, but I know what I'm doing.
I do want to make a point, though, and we did this with the, language registers. There's not a right or a wrong.
Right.
They're all right in some form or another. But you obviously were affected by the casual in a professional setting. And so that made you feel like you weren't doing it right. And you aren't doing it right. Casual is a good thing, but to be able to identify the right place, I think that's great.
And since we do a lot of PR work, going into a formal setting on some kind of banquet or whatever, and it's more of a formal, we're working with business people, to realize that Be more direct. Stop and listen. It's not relationship. You don't have to make everybody your friend. You know, it's just made me come away feeling a lot more comfortable, and it's made it easier for the next time I go to one of these sittings. Like I don't have to worry about what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do, or it's been really a great aha for me in so many ways.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So today we talked a little bit about story structure and time management when we communicate. There's a time and a place for a delivery of everything. There's not a good or a bad, but being able to identify the right place and the right time is the key and why we feel like this topic is important. If you want some more information on this and help practicing it, go ahead and contact us at Community Action. We'd love to help you work through it. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us today. Community Action Partnership is a nonprofit organization. All the services we provide are free of charge to income qualifying community members. What we talked about today is just a bit of what we cover in our coaching and workshops. For more information, you can check out our website at cap4action.org. That's CAP4action.org. You could also just give us a call at 1-800-326-4843 or come visit one of our locations. We would like to thank our sponsor, Optum Idaho, for making this series possible.